So to start off, what's going to make drawing the hand a whole lot easier is to not be thinking about individual fingers, but instead try and think about the hand as comprised of 3 different paddles. This is like one paddle, and then from this knuckle to here is another, and then from this knuckle to the end it's another one. So you can see it can kind of bend 1, 2, 3. And if you think about it like that first and you get that drawn in relatively closely, doesn't have to be 100% perfect right off the bat, it's going to make placing and finding where to put the fingers a whole lot easier. All right, if you're new to this channel, then welcome to Paint Coach. My name is Chris Fornatero, and I'm here to help simplify oil painting so that you can get better faster. If you want to check out the full version of this painting tutorial, you can on my Patreon page. There, for only 18 bucks, you can get access to over 300 painting video tutorials, all painted by me. They cover a wide range of subjects, so it doesn't matter if you're looking to paint still life, landscape, portraits, figures, animals. Also, doesn't matter what level of painter you are. If you're an absolute complete beginner, there's a lot of tutorials for you. If you have some experience, I feel like there's some good tutorials that will give you a challenge. Okay, so after I've drawn in the hand very loosely with just thin paint, I then block out these 3 paddles that I was talking about with just flat color, mainly focusing on getting the value right, because getting the value is going to help determine the bend of the hand and like the fingers and everything. So I'm making sure to get that right. You know, I'm still working very loose at this point. The paint is thin but not transparent, because I know I'm going to be adding paint on top of this, pushing, pulling as I move forward. And you can even see right here at the beginning with just flat color that a lot of the hand is being communicated, like a lot of the form is being communicated. I always say work big to small, but also easy to hard. Like if I just handed this painting over to you at this point and said, okay, now paint the fingers and finish the painting, it'd be a lot easier than if I just handed you a blank canvas. So make it easy on yourself and start with the easy things first, and then use those easy things to help you figure out the hard things. Now, as far as colors go, for skin tones in this hand, I'm just using the Zorn palette, which is ivory black, cadmium red, yellow ochre, and titanium white. Now, I like to think of the Zorn palette as pretty much just using the primaries. The black is pretty much acting as your blue, just a very desaturated blue. And then you got your red, and then your yellow ochre is acting as your yellow, but it's a very desaturated yellow. And since your blue and your yellow are desaturated, I feel like it's easy to get skin tones. Because a big trap I feel people fall into with skin tones is not desaturating the color enough. But with the Zorn palette, it's kind of already done for you, and I find it easier and takes less steps to get to skin tones. Now, if you struggle with mixing skin tones, I actually offer the skin tones lesson from my portrait painting course for free. I'll also put a link to that in the description of this video. Next thing I do is I use the background to cut into these big flat paddle shapes that I have to start and sculpt the fingers. It's really helpful to use the negative space to help draw something, especially when it comes to fingers like this. Like I'm looking at the gaps or the angles that are created by the hand or the fingers. And I find it easier because I'm just looking at abstract shapes, and my mind can't trick me into saying like, oh, like this is kind of how a finger should look, or oh, I feel like it should bend this way or that way. I'm just looking at an abstract shape and I'm just trying to mimic that. And I'm thinking of the angles and trying to match the angles and the spaces that I see. Next, I'm going to use lighter lights and darker darks to start and construct the form of the hand and the fingers. And I'm trying to think of everything as being carved out of wood with flat planes. This is going to help give structure and weight to the hand. If you've seen any of my videos, I talk about this a lot. This is why it's helpful to think about structure and planes for any subject. You know, if you want to strengthen your portraits, getting a planed head model and painting and figuring out the planes of the face is going to help you a lot. Same with still life. That's why I've made clay fruit with flat plane size. And I use that to help my students as an exercise to understand form and structure and how light hits certain planes. Now with the top of this hand, I'm not seeing this top part as just one flat plane. I'm actually seeing it as 2. There's a plane change kind of right at the thumb. And so getting a darker value there is just going to help me create that form. The same is true with the fingers. You know, I don't want to think about them as cylinders at this point. I want to think of them as blocks and thinking about very clear, distinct flat sides to get the form and the shape of them right. There'll be time later on to kind of finesse them and get them to look smoother if you want, but you really want to establish that hard concrete structure at first. Michael Shane Neal actually talks about that in his book, which I highly recommend. Portrait Painting My Point of View. Put a link to this in the description as well. But in the book, he kind of talks about when you're painting fingers, if you don't have that structure, you run the risk of your fingers kind of looking too much like tentacles and not really having that sturdy form. Now, as I'm painting, I'm not afraid to rework areas. I'm painting loose and fast, which means, yes, I'm going to make mistakes, but it's so easy to correct those mistakes. And I don't want to sacrifice the looseness and the energy of my brushwork trying to be careful. This is what I call like pushing and pulling. Like I always know I can fix anything that I don't get right, which causes me to paint with a lot more confidence, which I feel shows in your final painting. For example, I realized this thumb was too long, and so I just used some of the background color and, trimmed it down. As I move through the painting, I'm just constantly looking for form and thinking, all right, what areas look flat? What areas aren't reading? Like if I look at an area, I'm like, I can't tell what's going on there. I don't know what plane is happening there. I will adjust things and add things as necessary. By the end, there are certain areas like at the end of the fingers here where I just kind of let it drift into the shadows. Don't feel like you always need to identify every single edge. Like in the reference, if the finger is like kind of fading away into the shadows, like let it fade away into the shadows in your painting. If you struggle painting loose, I feel like painting hands is a great exercise to help you paint more loose because you still have to have a solid drawing. And painting hands, I feel like can help teach you how to get an accurate drawing without painting lines, but instead using shapes. Another great exercise you can do is to do master copies. Find master painters like John Singer Sargent. I love doing copies of hands in his paintings. I feel like whenever I see them, it just reminds me how little you can communicate a hand when you know what's going on. Like when you understand the plane changes, when you understand the structure and the form of the hand, you can create the end of the finger with one mark, or you can create a knuckle just by getting the right color and value in the right place. All right, hope you have more confidence now going in painting hands. If you have any questions, please leave those in the comments section. I love seeing them. They help me make more videos. If you'd like to see what I'm painting on a daily basis, you can follow me on Instagram, Forza43. I'm Chris Fornatero, here telling you to go get painting.